At the BizNews conference in Hermanus a month ago, we heard from the 34-year-old crime-fighting activist Ian Cameron on why he's heading for Parliament. Ian's number 7 on the DA's Western Cape list, which virtually guarantees him a place on one of those green leather benches after May the 29th. Other talented people who are likely to grace Parliament for the first time later this year include the former DA Midvaal Mayor Bongani Baloyi, who's number 1 in his new party. It's called Zuzifa. On that list, we've got ANC Veteran League Chair Snooki Zikalala, number 90 on the ANC national list. Herman Mashaba and Ethel Trollope, 1 2 on Action SA. Gayton McKenzie, Velenkosini Tlabisa, Musi Maimani, Ace Magashule, even Hatlari Motsoneng and Songezi Zibi are topping their party's national list, so they could be in SA Parliament. It's going to be an interesting place in future. 2 people who are going to make it so are Kathy Berman, who's number 4 on the Build One South Africa with Musi Maimani national list, and Prince Zuzifa Buthelezi, who is number 7 on the IFP's national list. So both of them pretty certain of going to Parliament for the first time. Ladies first, Kathy, why now? We've known each other for many years. You've always been an activist and, well, kind of out there, entrepreneurial activist. Why join Musi, and why indeed are you going to Parliament?
Alec, we go back a while, 30 years, although I still identify as 30. Yeah. So I think, Alec, I've been through any number of changes over the years, but the primary thing that's always driven me is social justice and democracy in the fullest extent. And so you knew me in my journalist days. I went on into all sorts of forms of business and worked a long time in government as a consultant, or full-time with Pravin at SARS in the early 2000s. And I just reached a point where I was always a supporter of the ANC from the 80s, which was UDF in those days. And I reached a point where, during COVID, where I couldn't anymore. My beloved ANC no longer held the same values that we all bought into. And so I was working really hard in civil society. I work with the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. I work in various informal settlements. And I just felt that I didn't have any impact. There was little me trying to get funding from wherever. And I started looking around. I was working in civil society organizations, and something clicked. I had an exhibition at Conhill. I heard Musi speaking at an event, and I would never have supported him in his former role. And suddenly it resonated for me. And after 1 or 2 meetings, I just felt it's time to step up. I would never have done this in my other life, but it was time. And it's felt absolutely right. There's so much that I know that so many of us can now do as civil society people, because the politicians, forgive me, but the politicians have just really, I don't think they worry about the people. And it's time for us as community to step up in whichever way we can, whether it's in Parliament or whether it's simply making sandwiches for people on the side of the road. Whatever it is, we've got to make a difference. This country's full of amazing, incredible people. It's up to us to step up. So that's me in short. I don't want to take over.
Prince Buthelezi, your father, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is an icon in my home province of KZN and around the world as well. And you've stayed out of politics. I see from, one can see everything now on the parliamentary or potential parliamentary list. So we know you have just turned, I think, 69. So you've managed to stay away from politics for a long, long time. And yet you're also going to Parliament this time around. What changed your mind?
Thank you, Alec. Thanks for the opportunity. First time on your platform. Okay, we got with Kathy many years ago, many years back as well. But to your question, Alec, you're absolutely correct. I really, Kathy will attest, never wanted to be anywhere near politics, and I was more into business. I suppose maybe it was mainly due to the pressure. You know what they call the burden of expectation. I think it gets to you because they define your objectives and they start marking you against those objectives which you never set yourself. And I mean, of course, if you talk about a turbulent space in terms of politics, my father was in a very turbulent space in terms of that. For as long as I'm sure you'll also attest to that, Alec. But then now finding myself in this position, I'm wondering, sometimes I ask myself, how much of this is by me wanting, like you're asking me, why now? Now, I don't know to what extent is it by me wanting to be here or just being fate, because, this expectation, also there was expectation from my father as well to say, I need someone who can take over the baton and carry on. So really, I found myself being nominated here. I tried to stay out, not because I wanted to do nothing, because I've always been very much aware of what's happening around me. And I don't know if I had a choice, having grown up in a home like this one. But now to be actively involved in politics, really, I've been urged by some family members, and of course, people who also believed in my father in the political space to say, you dare not just walk out. But then, of course, I mean, I've also embraced that I've got to try and make a change somewhere if I can, because the environment is very, very, it's the one that dictates how far you can go in terms of this, as we will chat further. But also, I thought my priority was to stabilize the homestead, because for the first time, I found myself thrust with this massive homestead with these people here as Inkosi of the Buthelezi clan. So even now, I'm really grappling with the prioritization, because I feel that my priority really, in terms of the staking order, is the clan, the Buthelezi clan.
And what
So here I am now, and looking at and wondering, what am I doing here?
And what about the IFP itself? When one looks at the pollsters, they appear to give a very different picture to the one that I'm hearing from Mr. Tlabisa, or indeed from the by-elections, where it was interesting. We had the latest polls coming out just around the time of the BizNews conference, and it put the IFP at maybe 2 or 3%, and yet you won 3 by-elections that day against the ANC, but with seismic increases. Do you think the polls are getting it wrong, or are you guys just overestimating?
Look, I don't think that. I think really it's a mixture of both. One must always strike a balance, because there are polls and then there are polls, and at times it depends who's looking at them. But I think that maybe people have also been a bit superficial in assessing the impact of the IFP. I mean, this is a party which at one time when the NFP was formed was left with 3 municipalities. Now, my father always said, I'd rather have good people on the ship, the story of being inside the tent, rather than being outside the tent. So really, there's a lot of effort that has been put in putting the IFP back to where it was. But I found it fascinating when you look at how the polls are flip-flopping, and they are saying different things. And it says to me, one must not too much be led by polls. They are important, of course, they always will be. But I think that in terms of the IFP, there are other questions which are pressing for the IFP. I mean, the coalitions. There's always a question of whether is it wise to decide before the election, the results of the election, because what if the partner you choose is nowhere to be seen, is not on the horizon at all? So really, there are certain compelling things which parties are dealing with right now, like, as I said, coalitions, which I don't think one can escape them, Alec. But it's how we do them. There are countries where they are powerful, they are doing well, but South Africa will have to go through a learning curve of coalition. And then whatever pain will come with that, we shall see.
How many municipalities does the IFP now govern in coalition?
I really wouldn't be taught to speak to the number, but it's a lot. But I mean, I can find out, because that just shows what I said about me and politics. But anyway, I know that it's a lot of municipalities, definitely 3 times a lot, because it was left with 3. I'm sure it can be 3 times 5 of where they stand right.
I was looking at the Good Governance Africa numbers just over the weekend, and it was interesting to see how the municipalities where the IFP governs have improved in those ratings quite significantly. But I guess that's a story for another day. Kathy, from your perspective, we've been following Muzi's journey now on BizNews for a couple of years already. And he's been hard at work in communities, really in the rural areas as well. What are you guys saying about the polls, where many of whom don't even give you a single seat?
You know, Alec, I'm one who feels that the polls, I mean, I know that everybody's talking about the science of the polls, but I'm one who, I remember going into a voting booth and looking and trying to be strategic, and my heart taking over, and I voted for the ANC for the last time. So I always wonder what people are going to do once they're faced with that piece of paper. What I can only respond to is how I see how people respond to Musi. Because I have absolute faith in Musi as a politician, as a man of integrity, and as a man who knows how to frame things, how to see things, and he's a man of compassion. And what I love is going onto the streets of the cities and seeing people who are in police uniforms, etc., running up and wanting their selfies. When I was putting up posters, people would literally in Sandton would stop their cars and say, "Is that Musi? I'm going to vote for him." So I think, again, this notion of can the sciences be accurate? And I don't want to be skeptical. People pour their lives into it. But I've got to believe that we've got an incredible group in our top tier. And that certainly the call for Musi is a big one. But we've got Ayanda, we've got Ubuntu. I don't have much recognition out there. But I think that those are the things that probably will work in our favor.
Oh, there's no doubt. A video that we republished of Ayanda's recently got more than 100,000 views. So lots of people who kind of get it, that Musi is getting around him. It seems many strong women. Maybe you need to elevate the profiles of the strong men that are around you. But it's going to be a great place. But for you, Kathy, and also for you, Prince Buthelezi, Parliament, from what I've been told, can be a very boring place, especially if you're in a party that isn't running the place. How are you going to overcome that boredom, or how indeed are you positioning yourself for the next 5 years? Maybe start with you, Kathy.
So for me, it's easy. I've decided exactly which committees I want to sit on. So I'm in there, Alec. You know, we're in there. We got certainly getting 4 seats in there because I'm sitting at number 4 right now. But I've decided exactly which portfolio committees I want to serve on. There's certain areas that I'm absolutely passionate about. There are areas I know a lot about. I worked in the PPP unit and things like that. I worked at SARS, but I wouldn't want to hog those seats. I really feel strongly about health, about home affairs, about women, etc. I mean, right now I work in the Children's Hospital where we can't get organ donors for our young kids with kidney issues. So there's a simple private members bill that I'll work on, which is to ensure that we have an opt-out versus an opt-in solution. I have a son, my instant son, who grew up in a township, who to this day hasn't got an ID book. He's 27 years old. So you can see again that the human rights, the justice issues are what absolutely float my boat. And so I'm not one who's going to sit there and play Candy Crush, and I don't want to go shopping for shoes, and I really don't want a blue light brigade. So for me, we're going to work damn hard. I don't think it's going to be boring. I think it's so exciting. I've worked for years on policies that have never seen the light of day. We have to be bringing people in who are going to sit in the committees and not fall asleep. So I'm there for working hard. So it's not going to be boring.
And from your perspective, Prince?
Alec, I think that I'm somehow aligned with what Kathy has said. The thing is that one of the reasons I really nothing turns me on about Parliament. I wonder when we talk about young people. I remember my father once in Parliament when they were sitting on the gallery when there was all this, throwing of missiles across the floor. He said, "Is this example of giving those young people up there?" Because really, at the moment, the perception of Parliament is very bad. So that also really weighed in for me to say, do I want to go to that place where you have, there's just no respect. Tolerance is getting worse and worse. Temperatures are getting higher and higher. And I said, these are adults. And I thought I have struggle to see myself sitting there. But then I've sat on many boards, and I've chaired many boards in terms of business. And I think you are more effective when you are in a committee. Just like, if I compare the board to a committee, rather than sit there. So I also will pick, when we sit down to say where we believe as an IFP we can contribute most, I will definitely point out very clearly where I would like to contribute. But I prefer the back room in terms of a small space committee situation than this broad thing. And I was just saying that it's always been my belief that it's no longer if actually, when I go there, I will be very, very clear what I pick in terms of channeling my energies to, but not what we see on TV and people falling asleep and snoring there.
Yeah, I think many people in South Africa will be cheering that comment, and nice to know that they'll have people like you guys helping them or representing them in Parliament. But why the IFP, Prince? Was it just a foregone conclusion? Did you ever think of any of the other parties?
Alec, I was born and bred in the IFP. My father, from the time I didn't even know. By the way, he was not always IFP. He was in the political space from when I was a baby. So how then it defined itself going forward was a different matter altogether, because he became many things. He served as a Minister of Home Affairs. In a way, even his role as a Prime Minister has got a lot of politics, and there's no argument there. So really not. But then I think what I always tell people is that I bought into the man who happened to be my father rather than the party. Because, I've always said, my father, if there's one thing I always really admired, is that whatever he did, he defined, he made it clear what we all know, that a family is a microcosm of the community. So if you are a leader, if you fail to be a leader in your own home as a husband and a father, I think there's no way then you can be phenomenal as a leader out there. So that's really the picture. I bought into the man, really, but then as I grew up, there are policies I've liked, the difference he has made, and certain characters in him as a man, which I really admired and respected. In terms of, he's known for no corruption, because except for the title of IFP, we must look at those characters. No tolerance for corruption, very high tolerant behavior in terms of other parties, and it really, this is why he ended up being defined as a statesman. So, Alec, really, to answer you, it's not so much what happened. It's like someone who defined my father as a phenomenal human being who happened to be a politician.
And from your side, Kathy, last word. Are you, when you look back as a hard-boiled, dyed-in-the-wool ANC supporter, you now joined in with the arch enemy, or certainly he was when he was leading the DA. Yeah, why Musi? Why with Musi's lot? Why not maybe Songezo Zibi if you wanted to make a difference, or indeed even Action SA?
Well, ironically, the ANC are the people who keep saying to me, why did I leave the ANC? So I suppose it was fortuitous. RISE were organizing at that point, but they weren't yet a party when I had this drive to make the change. And I believe that, the thing with Musi is he's been there. He knows the space. And I had an opportunity to work closely with them. I invested a year of my life working with them before we launched into campaign phase. And so I've been there, being able to have a strong role in it. And so it's fitted perfectly. There's been a lot of robust debate, and there've been certain positions that I wouldn't necessarily adhere to, but it would be the same with the ANC. It would be the same but it certainly, it would have, if there were any choices, it would have been RISE or Build One South Africa, but ANC is where I always belonged, but not the current ANC. So I'm looking forward to building, and I'm looking forward to working with dynamic, charismatic, intelligent, super intelligent people. But most excitingly, when we talk coalitions, I'm really excited about working alongside all the people you mentioned, because we as a group are going to make a difference. I can't wait to be working with so many amazing, amazing people.
Kathy Berman, Kathy Berman and Prince Zuzifa Buthelezi. It's been great talking with you. I think whoever's watching this is going to be feeling a little bit more uplifted about South Africa's political future. But I guess there was only one way for us to go. Roll on, May the 29th.